Joining us here from Philadelphia, kind enough to join us before a big night for him as part of the broadcast team of Prime Video, Thursday Night Football, and Sports Illustrated senior reporter Albert Breer. Good to see you, Bert. How are you doing, brother?
Good. How you doing, Rich?
I'm good, man. What's your reporting on what happened in Chicago? Let's just jump into it. What do you got?
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy situation. I think it's a combination of things. I would start with, maybe Caleb having a long way to go as a quarterback, and coming from the offensive background that he came from, playing for Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma, and then at USC. Like maybe he wasn't as ready for the NFL as you would have hoped. And so like in the spring and the summer, you saw some things where there was a learning curve with cadence and running a huddle and spitting a play call out and adjusting some stuff on the fly and doing things at the line. Like a lot of that stuff was behind. So there was that. I do think that because there are veteran voices on the offensive side of the ball there was some frustration both with the scheme and the quarterback. And then I think where Caleb's at on all of this is a factor too. And, just I would say when, you're a young player and you hear, some older players are frustrated, well, then does that get through to you? Now, in defense of Shane Waldron, I know, he did meet with the offensive leaders and, tried to really work with them on all of this stuff. But it just feels to me, Rich, in a lot of different ways, like, maybe the issue was kind of not having a coach on staff who had a lot of experience working with a quarterback this young, And so I think the feeling out maybe took a little bit longer than they expected. And they were aggressive. I mean, you remember you and I talking about this in the spring and summer, how aggressive they were about, onboarding him and getting ahead with him. And it's just, I think, because of all the work that was done and because of some of the veteran voices in the room, maybe they had kind of gotten to a point where, frustration, kind of the frustration put them in a position where something needed to change. And again, like I think part of it, if you look at their staff, like in the makeup of their staff, like Shane Waldron, part of the reason he brought Thomas Brown with him, the two of them worked together with the Rams, was because he was a different voice. And now, obviously the Bears players like get that voice on a full-time basis.
Yeah, man, it's kind of crazy just putting it all together. And I appreciate you doing that, Albert, where, I think it was multiple times ago when you appeared here and you were saying how the Bears used a top 30 visit, meaning it's the
Yep.
one time a prospect can visit your facility, and it was the only top 30 visit Caleb Williams took was to Chicago. They used that to help install an offense. I mean, Keenan Allen was at his pro day here in Southern California. I mean, the Bears were truly trying to be smart about it and get the wheels spinning in a way that other teams who are about to choose a rookie quarterback at the top of the draft could not do. And yet here they are prior to week 11 making an offensive coordinator change, going with a guy whose previous coordinating experience was last year with the team that performed so poorly. They were able to draft Caleb Williams. And now that's the guy who they're turning to say in the middle of this cauldron prior to the Packers week to say, bail us out. And I'm wondering what you're hearing about that process.
Well, I know, one thing that they have done this week, they've met as a unit a little bit more than being broken up in position groups. And, I think that allows them to address some big picture things. One thing that Matt Eberflus has sort of emphasized to the team is that all their goals are still in front of them. They're not 1-8, they're 4-5, so there's still, everything they want. They haven't played a division game yet, Rich, believe it or not. Like 6 of their last 8 games are division games starting this week with the Packers. So obviously like things have not gone according to plan. And I think everybody feels the pressure now of where they're at and what all this means going forward. I think it's impossible to miss the fact that two offensive coordinators have been fired in season this year, and they're the two guys that Matt Eberflus chose to run his offense in Chicago. It's Luke Getsy, who was just fired with the Raiders, and now it's his most recent coordinator in Shane Waldron. So, do you get another swing at that if you're Matt Eberflus, or do you have to find a way to make it work with Thomas Brown to get yourself out of this? I think the latter would probably be the answer.
So what, and then we can move on. What you're reporting on Eberflus's voice in that locker room. You know, DJ Moore famously last week asked if Eberflus had lost the locker room. He says, "I want to say no." You know, and so what's that scoop right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think Matt's done like a really good job over the last 2.5 years of getting that program back to level ground, developing a defense, but offensively, it hasn't worked. I mean, you could even look to like Justin Fields going to Pittsburgh, and I know he's not starting anymore, but he went 4-2 there, So, like, were they getting the most out of Justin Fields in 22 and 23? And are they getting the most out of Caleb Williams now? Are they doing enough to meet Caleb halfway? I think there's a lot of frustration in general there right now. Like, and I think this can boil over in different ways. But when you have accomplished players in the locker room, like Keenan Allen, like DJ Moore, guys who have pelts on the wall, DeAndre Swift, and they are stuck in this sort of rut where they have not scored a touchdown since that Hail Mary. I think that frustration can manifest in a number of different ways. And, again, I think, we all talk about like losing players and everything else. Like, part of the coach's job is to give the players the answers to the test. And, I do think to some degree, the players on the offensive side maybe have lost a little faith that those answers are there for them.
Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. Steelers and Ravens, brother. Can't wait for this one. And the Steelers also starting a stretch in week number 11 where their division games are in front of them. Everybody else, they've already played, and they're coming into this stretch, sitting in first place and they're also sitting there with the quarterback situation totally settled, right? I mean, like, this thing is settled, and Russ what's the general sense around the league that the old Russ is back right now, Albert?
Yeah, I don't know if the old Russ is back, but I think it's like finding an effective way to use him. And I think a lot of people deserve credit for this. Rich, I think Mike Tomlin for having the instinct to go against what a lot of the people in his building felt 3 weeks ago. I think, Arthur Smith deserves credit for designing an offense that works for Russell, that leverages his greatest strengths. And I think Russell himself deserves credit for accepting the reality of who he is as a quarterback. And I mean, we all heard this, right? Like, that when he went to Denver, like, he wanted to play quarterback a different way. And they were going to spread the field out, and they were going to let him throw the ball all over the yard and be a point guard. And he was going to be like a Peyton Manning, Tom Brady type of quarterback as he aged, and it didn't work. And I think, it took Russell a while to wrap his head around that. And I think working with Sean Payton probably got him a little closer to the answer. And I think the answer is the people in Seattle knew what they were doing, and the people in Seattle deployed him the correct way. And so, I know a lot of what they're doing with the movement and the run game stuff and marrying that with, with the passing game. A lot of the concepts that they're using relate back to what he did really well in his early years in Seattle. So I think Russell deserves some credit. Like, we've all criticized him, right? Like, for, how self-aware is he? Those sorts of questions. Well, like, I do think that there's some humility involved here in Russell accepting that, maybe the answers that he thought he had were incorrect, and that and looking back, maybe some of the things they did with him in Seattle were correct. Because I think a lot of the success they've had with him as the quarterback go right back to the things he did well when he was a Seahawk.
Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's get to tonight. What a game, man. I'm psyched for you, psyched for the whole Prime Video crew. That, last week was just dynamite. Now here's a great follow-up game between two more division opponents, Washington and Philadelphia. What happened in that Eagles bye week that changed things? What's your 2 cents there?
So I think it's a couple things. I think Nick Sirianni knew with 2 new coordinators. There was like some leadership turnover too in the locker room with Fletcher Cox and Jason Kelsey gone. Those are two guys that were very, very important to everything that has been built there, over the last decade plus. And so, I know one thing that Nick wanted them to do, both as units and as position groups, was reflect on the first month of the season. And I think a lot of those guys took that to heart, and that's across the board. Offense, defense. They had new coordinators they were adjusting to, and Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio. And it wasn't just on the players, it was on the coaches too. Hey, like, take a hard look at what we're doing here and how can we do X, Y, and Z better. And I think if you want to drill down on it in particular with, what what Jalen Hurts and Kellen Moore were able to do. I mean, they talked every day during the bye and they bounced stuff off each other. And if you look and you take a close look at it, it's not just the 5 wins in a row since the 2-2 start. It's also Jalen's individual performance, in that his passer rating was in the 80s in each of his first 4 games. And since then, it's been 115 or better in each of the last 5 games. I mean, that's a market improvement, no matter how you look at that quarterback rating stat. And, part of it, of course, is getting healthier. Getting A.J. Brown back is obviously going to be a big deal. But, I do think like a lot of progress was made during that bye week. Here's the other thing. Like, I do think the Eagles view themselves as one of these franchises that uses the preseason or uses the first month of the season in this era, the way the CBA is set up, as almost an extended preseason. They don't play their guys a lot in the preseason games. And, like, they feel like they're strong enough from a roster standpoint, where, they can work the kinks out early in the regular season. And I think that was part of what happened over the first month as well.
How about that? And then the Commanders, brother. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean,
it's like a new franchise, right?
They totally are, man.
Yeah.
You speak to a Commanders fan, a Washington football team fan, right? And they're just looking around. They're thinking they're going to wake up and Dan Snyder's going to wind up in the owner's suite again, and they'll be just like, what, that they're not in Kansas anymore. You know what I mean? And you talk to them, and they're like, I can't believe Jayden Daniels and the way that Dan Quinn's coaching, they can't believe it. And we had Terry McLaurin on, and I know you know him, and obviously you've been following his career since he stepped out of high school. And I said to him after that catch against Joe Burrow to beat against the Bengals to beat the Bengals on that Monday night in week 3, where instead of settling for a field goal, Jayden Daniels took one in the chops and found McLaurin in the end zone and basically said, drive home safely. I said to him, you look like a guy who's like, all right, I got my guy. I finally got my guy, with all due respect to the other guys that he's had. He didn't deny it. I mean, it's just 100% what's going on right now. But now you got to sit here and wonder, I mean, is there a rookie wall? What is going on for the final stretch here? Can they come up with that dub tonight, which would be huge, obviously.
So I love like the stories you hear about Jayden. I really love them, right? Like, so I'll give you a couple.
Please.
So there was that week they were in Arizona, right? Like, and if you guys remember, I think it was between the Monday night game in week 3 or week 2, and then and then they played the Cardinals the following Sunday, right?
Well, that game against Cincinnati was that week 3 Monday night. Then they went to Arizona and came home for Cleveland. That's what happened.
Right. So they were in Arizona for that whole week. And you hear, like, Dan Quinn told me, like, he would walk down the hallway at the hotel they were staying at there in Arizona. And, they have the makeshift meeting rooms and the conference rooms in the hotel. And he said he'd walk out of his office there, and at 9 p.m. he'd walk by the quarterback room and the lights on. And Jayden Daniels is still in there. He's habitually at the facility at 5:30 a.m. Anybody who knows Cliff Kingsbury knows he's an early riser. Well, Jayden's there with him, and they're getting time working sort of off the books on stuff to make him better. He does the virtual reality stuff. Like, that's something they're very big on at LSU. He carried that right into the pros with him. It's just, like, every little thing you hear about him is like, this kid does it the right way, and this kid is, like, really focused on becoming the best football player he possibly can be. And I think that's how he's earned the respect of so many people in that locker room. And I think it's also the maturity, Rich, of a guy who went through a lot in college, was at 2 different colleges, started 55 games, Was a multi-year starter at both schools, went through, everything that happened at Arizona State with the NCAA investigation and everything else. And if he had come out after 3 years, and maybe he would have gone undrafted, goes to LSU, has to reset, and then lights the world on fire over 2 seasons there. So he's a kid who's seen a lot and been through a lot. And I think there's a maturity to the way that he conducts himself because of it. And I think it shows up in like knowing what it takes now, having an understanding of what it takes. And, you hear little things too, like little things like, his eye discipline in the first game wasn't great. Like he played really well, but he was pretty quick to have his eyes down and then look to run. Well, like then in week 2, he worked on that and the light came on for him in week 3. It's like, oh, wow. Like when I keep my eyes downfield, I'm really opening opportunities for my receivers. And so, like there's just little stories you hear about the progress he's making and the amount of work he's putting in. They couldn't be happier with him. And if you've been around him at all, and I've just spent a little time around him, like just how smooth and cool he is and how natural he is kind of in his element, on a football field and a locker room, all of that, like there's reason to be really, really excited about where he's at.
I love it for Commanders fans, that's for sure. Albert Breer, before I let you go, 6-3 win teams, 5-2 win teams, third of the league has 3 or fewer wins entering week number 11. What is the coaching carousel front looking like right now with about, what would you say, 7 games writ large left for everybody here?
Yes. Well, so we already have the 2 coaching changes, right? So like, the Jets, obviously, made their move quite some time ago. The Saints are now in that category too. I get asked a lot who the next team would be. I mean, I think the Jaguars are the staff there is fighting for their job. Obviously Chicago's in that boat too now, having offloaded an offensive coordinator. So, this could be a year where we wind up with 7 or 8 openings, and it'll be interesting because I think, you've got guys in different buckets this year. I don't think that there's like an overload of candidates from one bucket, so you have, the offensive mastermind types. Ben Johnson certainly in that grouping. I think he's going to be picky, the Lions offensive coordinator. Does Cliff Kingsbury get another shot? Now he sort of hits multiple things as the former head coach and an offensive guy. You have an older offensive mind, which isn't as common in Todd Monken with the Ravens. A lot of people like what he's done there. Then you got the ex-players, right? Like, so your Dan Campbell model, your D'Amico Ryans model. Could a guy like Aaron Glenn, be the next one there? And then hovering over it all, we have the Death Star, right? Like we have the old Death Star of the last 25 years, which is Bill Belichick, So it should be interesting, and I think it's I don't know that there's like one trend this year that everybody's going to be pulling on. It feels like, again, like there are multiple buckets to pull from. And so that part of it's going to be interesting. As for like, again, the in-season changes, I think the Jaguars, once they sort of survive that London turn, I don't know if they're going to fire coaches soon. But I don't think things are completely great in that building or have been. So it'll be interesting to see where that one goes. As for Chicago, like I think this week was probably their move. I don't think the McCaskies would do anything in season. So
I don't know who's going to do anything in season right now, anyway, unless it's like a full on revolt from a fan base, and I don't see that. It's obviously down the road, and you mentioned a couple of things. I mean, Aaron Rodgers saying he thinks looks like he wants to play in 2025, which what I would imagine would affect Woody Johnson's coaching search before he appears to be leaving again. And then you've got Dallas, and when NFL Network launched, it was the Parcells show down there when Dallas kind of needed a switch after some gears spinning to just hand it off and say, you think we can't have somebody in here who wants to shop for the groceries? Well, guess what? We can, and go to work. And that, I don't know if that's a fit or if Belichick is going to have a better shot at getting gigs now than last time around, I guess. That's
so the Dallas one's the Dallas one's fascinating to me, Rich, just because, like you said, like there is it's like the last time in that the contract's expiring. Like, remember Jason Garrett, how they legitimately were running a coaching search and they hadn't let him go yet. You know what I mean? Like, so It just feels like a lot of different things are on the table there with Mike McCarthy's contract running out if things don't get better. And I would go back to, why Jerry hired Bill Parcells in the first place. And I think the reason why is he needed credibility, right? Like that was the thing. They were trying to get a stadium built. They had just been through the Dave Campo era. They had become like a little bit of a laughing stock. And so they needed credibility, which is why Jerry Jones was willing to hand the keys over to Bill Parcells. Are they at that point again?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a fair question. Like, are they or are they not at that point again, where they feel like they need credibility? They need somebody to come in and turn the ship. It's an interesting one, and I think I don't know if I put it at the top of the list, but it's certainly on the list of jobs you'd consider like that might fit for Belichick.
And I guess full circle here, Albert. I appreciate you, speaking of Dallas, for closing the curtains behind you.
You want me to open them? I can.
Go ahead. Let's see if this is like an AT&T Stadium situation right here, because
let's sunshine in. Albert.
Oh, see, right, I can't even see now. See, oh my God! Wow. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like,
I didn't think it looked bad, but
See, oh wow, look at it's on automatic. Oh. Wow, of course, Bezos is putting them in a nice spot. Ooh. Look at that. Wow. Normally, I'm used to those big old, plastic rods that you have to, you gotta shove them together and shove like a waste basket up against it to make sure it doesn't have a crease. Look at that.
The first time with this one, I yanked it and I was afraid I broke it because it started moving. I was like, whoa, what's going on there? So I'm not accustomed to it either. But
it's just expensive. What is it? Bezos won't miss it. He won't know. Get out of here. But there it is. See? I mean, if only Jerry had curtains like that, brother. If only. You know
what the crazy thing about, you guys know about the orientation thing with the stadium, right? You guys know about that part of it?
About
which is wild.
Go for it.
So like how every football, like all the outdoor football stadiums are north-south orientation to avoid that problem.
Uh-huh.
And AT&T Stadium is east-west, which is why that problem exists.
And
did you guys know that?
And that was done on purpose. Well, I mean,
yeah, because he thought it would look cool. I think he thought it would look cool, which it does look cool, right? Like it just doesn't help you play football.
The photos are amazing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's that picture. I mean, you guys have seen that picture of Brady dropping back, and the sun is like. Yeah. It looks like you're playing football and like in heaven or something on that one picture, but I'm sure it doesn't help you see downfield if you're the quarterback.
Well, look at that, man.
There it is. Yeah. Yeah.
The referee in this photo is shielding his eyes.
Yes, he can't see.
Yeah.
Blinded by the light.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful picture, though.
Could
you see like Sean Hockley wearing like aviators out there?
Yes.
When he's not speaking German.
By the way, Rich, I heard your reaction, and that was great when he came out with the and you were like, oh, that was perfect.
Oh my goodness, look at this guy hooked on phonics all of a sudden. Albert, have a great broadcast, man. I'm looking forward to it. Right. Really, really, really looking forward to tonight. Thanks for the time.
All right, thanks, Rich. Me too.
The great Albert Breer, everybody. Check him out on Prime Video's coverage of Thursday Night Football this evening between the Commanders and the Eagles, and you could see it right here on the Roku portal. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.